What if the terrifying beasts and multi-headed dragons described in the visions of Ezekiel, Daniel, and John in the book of Revelation were not literal monsters or symbols of evil empires, but were actually coded descriptions of ancient, non-human intelligences that once governed the earth in partnership with humanity, beings of such profound wisdom and power that their true nature was deliberately obscured by later religious authorities who sought to demonize any form of divine interaction that bypassed their own institutional control. In the hidden archives of a monastery nestled in the mountains of Armenia, a region steeped in ancient lore that predates even the earliest biblical narratives, there exists a collection of apocryphal texts written in Aramaic and Old Syriac, scrolls that claim to be the original, unedited visions of the prophets, preserved by a secret order that understood the true meaning of the Dragon Kings and the covenant they once held with humanity. In the autumn of 2024, a linguist and scholar of ancient Near Eastern religions named Dr. Elias Thorne was granted unprecedented access to these archives as part of his research into the linguistic origins of biblical prophecy. And among the hundreds of fragmentary texts he examined, he discovered a complete codex that bore the title The Unveiling of the Dragon Kings, attributed to a scribe who claimed to have been a direct disciple of the prophet Ezekiel. The manuscript was in remarkably good condition, its parchment still supple, its ink still vibrant, as though it had been preserved not just by careful storage, but by some energetic field that protected it from the ravages of time. Elias opened the codex with trembling hands, understanding that if this text was authentic, it represented evidence of a tradition that the established church had spent millennia trying to erase, proof that the dragons of biblical prophecy were not always symbols of evil, but had once been revered as sacred beings, as kings who held a covenant with humanity, guiding its evolution before a deliberate schism occurred. The text began with words that immediately signaled this was not a conventional interpretation of prophecy. I, Baruch, scribe of the prophet Ezekiel, record here what my master truly saw, not as it was later edited by those who feared the ancient wisdom, but as it was revealed to him in the fiery chariot. The beings he described, the living creatures with 4 faces and 4 wings, with wheels within wheels, were not angels as the priests later claimed, but were the Dragon Kings, the ancient guardians of the earth, beings of pure consciousness who once walked among humanity and taught us the laws of the cosmos, the secrets of creation, the language of light that predated all spoken tongues. Elias read through the night, his academic training warring with the part of him that recognized something profoundly important in what he was reading. The text explained that the Dragon Kings were not physical beings in the human sense, but were energetic entities, consciousness forms that could manifest in various shapes, often appearing as winged serpents or multi-headed creatures to convey their multi-dimensional nature. They were the architects of the Earth's energetic grid, the keepers of the planetary wisdom, and they had entered into a covenant with early humanity, guiding its development through direct transmission of knowledge, teaching humans how to live in harmony with the Earth and with each other. The fall of humanity, Baruch wrote, was not a fall from grace, but a fall from gnosis, a deliberate severing of the connection to the Dragon Kings when a faction of humanity chose dominion over partnership, control over cooperation, the illusion of independent power over the reality of sacred interdependence. This choice created a schism in consciousness, a veil that descended between humanity and the Dragon Kings, making their presence seem terrifying and their wisdom inaccessible to those who had chosen separation. The text revealed that the beasts and dragons of later biblical prophecy were not literal evil entities, but were distorted reflections of the Dragon Kings, perceived through the veil of separation, their true nature misunderstood and demonized by those who had lost the capacity to perceive them in their original glory. The multi-headed dragon of Revelation, for example, was not a symbol of Satan, but a fragmented memory of the Dragon King's multi-dimensional consciousness, its 7 heads representing the 7 primary energy centers of the Earth and the 7 levels of consciousness that humanity had to integrate to restore the covenant. Elias found detailed descriptions of practices that the prophets had used to re-establish connection with the Dragon Kings, techniques that combined breathwork, meditation, and visionary states to pierce the veil of separation and perceive the energetic reality that underlay the physical world. The practices involved visualizing the spine as a central pillar of light, a tree of life that connected the practitioner to the earth below and the cosmos above. And through this pillar, the Dragon Kings could transmit their wisdom directly into the prophet's consciousness, bypassing the limitations of language and linear thought. When the prophet truly saw, Baruch explained, they did not see monsters, but magnificent beings of light, guardians of the earth's wisdom, who were calling humanity to remember the covenant, to heal the schism, to restore the partnership that alone could carry the planet through the cycles of destruction and rebirth. The terrifying imagery was not meant to instill fear, but to convey the immense power of these beings, a power that could be destructive if misused, but that was inherently benevolent when approached with humility and respect. The text revealed that the kings of the earth, who would eventually rule in partnership with the divine, were not human monarchs, but awakened humans who had integrated the dragon consciousness, who had restored the covenant within themselves, and who could therefore serve as bridges between humanity and the Dragon Kings, guiding the planet toward a future of harmony and balance. The conflict described in Revelation was not a battle between good and evil, but a struggle between 2 paradigms of consciousness, the paradigm of separation and dominion, and the paradigm of unity and interdependence. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our content. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to know. Elias spent months in the monastery, translating the codex, and as he did, he felt his own consciousness expanding, perceiving reality in ways that his academic training had never prepared him for. He began to have vivid dreams of flying on the back of a magnificent dragon whose scales shimmered with all the colors of the cosmos, a being that communicated not through words, but through direct transmission of knowing, downloading information into Elias's consciousness that felt simultaneously ancient and utterly new. In these dreams, the Dragon King showed him the true history of the earth, the cycles of creation and destruction, the rise and fall of civilizations, all governed by energetic patterns that humanity had forgotten how to perceive. He understood that his discovery was not just an academic breakthrough, but a spiritual calling, that he was meant to be one of the humans who would help restore the covenant, bringing forward the ancient knowledge that had been suppressed for thousands of years. He knew that this would make him a target, that the same forces that had demonized the Dragon Kings would resist the re-emergence of a truth that threatened their institutional authority. But he also knew that the time for hiding was over, that the earth itself was calling for the return of the ancient partnership, for the rebalancing of consciousness that was essential for humanity's survival. He emerged from the monastery not as a scholar but as a prophet, a man who carried in his consciousness the awakened wisdom of the Dragon Kings, and he began to share his findings with a small group of mystics and spiritual seekers who had also felt the call, people who had been drawn to his work through dreams and synchronicities, who recognized in Elias's story an echo of their own deepest longings. Together, they formed a modern order of dragon keepers, not trying to recreate the past, but bringing the ancient wisdom forward in forms appropriate to the contemporary world, teaching practices that allowed people to awaken the dragon consciousness within themselves, to connect with the Earth's energetic grid, to perceive the multidimensional reality that underlay the physical world. The academic establishment dismissed his claims as pseudoscience, and religious institutions condemned him as a heretic. But Elias no longer cared about external validation because he had found something far more valuable: direct experience of the divine, the knowing that came from within, the power that flowed through his own being when he connected with the Dragon Kings. He watched as the people in his order experienced profound transformations, healing physical ailments, awakening psychic abilities, and developing a deep sense of purpose that came from understanding themselves as living bridges between humanity and the ancient guardians of the earth. In his final years, as illness consumed his body but left his consciousness blazing with the dragon fire that he had spent his life learning to cultivate, Elias returned to the monastery and added his own testament to the ancient scrolls, his words joining those of Baruch and the countless prophets who had come before. He wrote that the Dragon Kings were not external deities to be worshipped, but were aspects of universal consciousness that could be integrated by any human willing to do the work, that the covenant was not a historical artifact, but a living agreement that could be renewed in the heart of each individual who chose partnership over dominion, unity over separation, wisdom over ignorance. The Dragon Kings rise again, Elias wrote, not as literal beings descending from the sky, but as awakened consciousness emerging from within humanity, not as a threat to religion, but as a fulfillment of prophecy, revealing what the prophets truly saw before their visions were edited and distorted by those who feared the truth. The beasts of Revelation are not symbols of evil, but fragmented memories of the ancient guardians, calling humanity to remember the covenant, to heal the schism, to restore the partnership that alone can carry the earth through the crisis that approaches and into the future that wants to be born through those brave enough to remember what the ancestors knew, that we were never meant to rule the earth alone, but to serve as conscious partners with intelligences that see what we cannot see, know what we have forgotten, and offer what we desperately need if we are willing to receive it with humility, with respect, with the understanding that the covenant is not about power, but about relationship, not about dominion, but about sacred interdependence, not about what we can take, but about what we can give when we finally remember that the dragons were never our enemies, but our teachers, our partners, our kin, waiting through millennia of separation for the moment when humanity would choose. Reunion and the covenant that was lost would be found again, restored not as historical artifact, but as living practice, ancient wisdom meeting modern crisis, offering the path that leads not backward to some imagined golden age, but forward to a future where earth consciousness and sky consciousness work together as they were always meant to, as the covenant promised they could, as they will when enough souls remember and choose and practice the partnership that predated dominion and that will outlast it, the dragon covenant that once governed earth and that waits to govern it again when we are finally ready to remember what we chose to forget, what the prophets truly saw, and what we too can see if we open our inner eyes and listen to the ancient call that resonates in the depths of our being, inviting us to become once again the dragon keepers, the guardians of the earth, the conscious partners in the great dance of creation that continues forever. And if you like this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.